Good night. How you guys are doing? This is Centeno, retired command sergeant major. We're gonna go right into it tonight. Thank you again for tuning in from Etching Consulting at etchingconsultation.com. That is my website. You can find me there. I really want to thank you for tuning in, and been doing this for a couple of months now, and I'm gonna just keep pounding. You know, our old sergeant major used to say that just keep moving forward and keep pounding. You just gotta keep moving forward. I'm gonna leave that tuning there for those out there that remember those cadences running in the military before it goes off over here. This information is not sponsored by any government entity. I am not representing the military or any affiliates to the military. This is based completely on my experience, so I am not representing any government entity. I want to put that out there. Today we're gonna have a great topic, and we're gonna talk about retirement benefits for law enforcement. But before we start, we have to cover some stuff, some terms, so we understand. And the reason this topic came about is because this last week I was helping a couple. You know, I was helping a couple. Thank you. I was helping a couple, trying to make this a little bit fun. And they had a great question, which I knew the answer, and I think it was important to put it out. And I'm going to cover that in a second, but talking about benefits for law enforcement and specific, that law enforcement has some terms that we have to understand so you can understand the topic of tonight. What we talked about last week, just to recap, we talked about the civilian federal service and thinking about joining the military. For those out there, also doing notarizing papers for those out there that live in the Central Florida area. Before I go into the topic, what do? I do military consulting. I help military members, not only military members, but civilians with military resumes, civilian resumes to join the federal force, military consultation that has to do with retirement, VA claims. That's what I'm working right now, and I'm trying to expand later once I retire from my current job. Actually, I'm going to start expanding. This work that I'm doing right now actually going to turn into a podcast. I'm going to start inviting hosts over here. Guests, so they're going to know their own subject. They're going to be the subject matter expert on specific topics. I have a lot of friends that work for VA, work for law enforcement entities. I know people everywhere, so we're gonna start inviting them to the show to talk about their experiences, especially for the military. How is the transition from the military to civilian? So we can talk and we can create a network that we can help each other out. I'm gonna take my headphones. Not used to using this. I use it just to listen to the sound. So I'm gonna go into my slides over here. Last week we talked a little bit about if you are in the National Guard and the Reserve and you are also working for the Civilian Federal Service, just to recap a little bit, what are the benefits? We talk about the 120 hours that you get for military leave and you get paid for both places. We also talked about how you can actually accrue annual leave, and instead of getting 4 hours, you can get 8 hours if you have 15 years of federal service. Talked about some agencies you can actually use your military leave, then you can use your regular leave, annual leave, and other agencies also allow you to use your sick leave. And I'm recapping from last week. Also talked about the veteran preference points. You get that. Also talked about that you cover under USERRA, and you cover in certain, if you're deployed, your job has to wait for you for 5 years. We talk about different topics. I'm just recapping so we can go into the topic of tonight. How your increase of hours, like I said, with 15 years, you can get 8 hours per pay period, and so you actually get more vacation out of the year. Okay, so what we're gonna talk tonight is really interesting topic. I'm gonna change my slide here for a second, but we have to cover some terms and definitions first. And what it is a 6C law enforcement officer retirement. And you might ask your question, you might ask what is 6C, and that's what I'm going to cover tonight. Because that defines special retirement benefits that only applies for those law enforcement officers and some other positions that are deemed law enforcement to have certain benefits. And that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. And this question again came when I was talking to this couple. One of them thinking about joining law enforcement in the civilian side, federal, and he's trying to join the military. So I was trying to give him some tips, and the lady didn't know that if you're joined into a 6C position, that's what we're going to talk about tonight, all your benefits transfer from one agency to the other. And that's including your time served. And I'm going to explain that, but that's the reason I brought this up, because I know there's some people out there that actually ask that question. What happened if I spend 5 years, for example, working for the FBI or for Department of Homeland Security in a law enforcement cover position? That's what the 6C is. What happened with that time that I put in? If I transfer, can I transfer from one agency to the other? What happened with that time? If I'm entitled, what are my entitlements? And that's really important, because a lot of people are afraid to actually to jump from one agency to the other because they think they're gonna lose their benefits. I gave you my example. I jumped from a couple of agencies and all my benefits transfer over. So we're gonna talk about that, but before we go into the topic, we have to define some terms and definitions here. Okay, so we are gonna cover what CSRS is and FERS, and that's pretty much retirement system from the federal government. The Civil Service Retirement System, and that's what the CSRS is pretty much a system of retirement, and it's different from the Federal Employment Retirement System, and that's the FERS. The biggest difference is that, and I highlighted here in yellow, that CSRS generally do not pay Social Security taxes, nor they claim Social Security benefits. That's a big, difference from the other retirement system. CSRS may participate in TSP, that's the Thrift Savings Plan, but they receive no matching contributions from employing agencies. The difference from this and the FERS is that the FERS, the agency match up to 5% in your TSP, and also employees covered by FERS pay Social Security taxes and can receive benefits from the Social Security. I'm going to read it. Employer covered by FERS pay Social Security taxes and receive Social Security benefits. Those are pretty much the two retirement systems. I will say mostly all of the 6C positions are on the FERS. That's what I've seen. Okay, so that's the big difference. So those terms you have to understand. What am I talking about this? Those out there that want to join the federal civilian side in the federal government in a law enforcement agency need to know these terms, because there will be shock not understanding the information and what they got into, meaning what benefits I'm going to get when I retire. This is the reason I'm putting this out there. Let me go to my notes here a second. So that's pretty much the definitions. What counts as law enforcement? Okay, what counts as law enforcement for retirement? Okay, I'm going to change here in the screen. Give me a second so I can read. So this is pretty much from a website. This is information that I find and I put it up. So what is considered federal law enforcement officer in the federal service? This is the definition. For purposes of retirement benefits, the term law enforcement officer is defined in Title V as follows: an employee whose duties are primary the investigations, apprehension, or detention of individuals whose duties are primarily the investigation, apprehension, I just said that, I'm sorry, suspected or convicted of offenses against the criminal laws of the United States. So that's pretty much the definition. I can send you the link of this, but that's pretty much the definition. The reason I'm covering this because some agencies, you'll be surprised they're not covered, and you do some time in one agency and then you transfer, some benefits will transfer, but you do 5 years and then you have to start your clock again to retire. So you have to do another 20 years, and I cover that in a second here. That is the reason I'm bringing that up. Excuse me. Is a current bill right now in a house for both, and it's the bill HR 962, and it's called the Law Enforcement Officers Equity Act. And this is the reason they're doing this is because they're finding out that a lot of law enforcement agencies are not getting the benefits they deserve. And I'm going to give you some jobs that do have the 6C retirement system on their first, and some others that don't, and you'll be surprised. And one of them that doesn't have it, that they're fighting it right now in this bill, is Customs and Border Protection officers, not Border Patrol. Border Patrol are on their 6C. Okay, and you'll be surprised because a lot of people don't know this. Okay, and this is pretty much the stuff that the bills talk about. I highlighted some pointing here, and is to address some of the United States portal inspection services. Those are postal marshals. They work in law enforcement. Also, the police that work in the VA hospital, they're not covered on the 6C, and this is what this bill is doing. They're trying to get their benefits. If this gets approved, which I'm pretty sure is gonna get approved, they will get the 6C, so every benefit will transfer over if they were in another agency also with a 6C position. That's important to understand. And also, I talked about the importance of seeing what kind of serious job that you're applying for under USA job, because that's going to define the position. Remember, we talked about 1811 jobs, 1801, you can see that over here, job, because some of the jobs are defined and also gave you that 6C retirement benefits. Okay, really important to know. When I go into different scenarios here, the bill addressed the unfair distinction in our laws. Tens of thousands of men and women in uniform do not have full access to federal retirement benefits. The law enforcement legislation that I'm talking about will give federal officers with 6C retirement benefits the ability, this is some of the benefits, to retire at age 50 with 20 years of service. That's one of them. Or at any age after 25 years of service. That is a big change, because a lot of people start working in a law enforcement job in the federal service and they cannot leave until they're 50. But if this is changed, or they qualify for the 6C position retirement benefits, they can do 25 years if they came in early, and actually they'll just do 25 years and retire. They don't have to stay longer than that. In my case, like I told you, I started at my 32 years, so at 52 I can leave, and that is my plan. Why? Like I explained before, I'm buying 15 years active duty. That will put me at 35 years of time for pay, not for service. Big difference. I'm only buying my years for pay. I still have to do my 20 years to retire, and that's what the 6C is so important. And I'm going to give you an example before I go into a definition and more of the scenarios here. Let's say you join, I'm going to give you my example. I work for the Department of Energy, and that was a federal agent position, okay? I did it for amount of time. That position at that time wasn't 6C covered. The reason I left is because I wanted to make sure that I was covered in case I wanted to jump to another agency and all my benefits will transfer over. So at that time, that position wasn't covered. If I would have done 5 years and then jump into another agency, I would have to start from scratch. In order for me to retire, I have to do my 20 years. So if I did 5 years, I lost those 5 years for retirement purposes. All your benefits will change over, your health benefits, your hours that you accumulated for leave and sick leave will also translate to or be transferred to your other job. But the time served, you have to be in a 6C position, because if not, you will have to do 20 years on that job in order to retire. You will not be able to transfer those years that you serve in that position to a 6C position. That's the reason I'm doing this this video for you to understand. So an example here, the bill will also expand the definition of law enforcement officers for retirement benefits to include OGS 0083. That's a position defined for some specific jobs of law enforcement. The proposed bill will grant law enforcement officer status to a number of new employees, including employees of the Internal Revenue Service, whose duties are primarily the collection of delinquent taxes and securing delinquent returns. It will also expand coverage to employees of the U.S. Postal Inspection Service and employees of the Department of Veterans. I talked about that. Department of Veterans Affairs, who are department police officers. Those are those that are in the VA hospitals, and that's what this bill does. I'm going to talk about, before I go into some of the benefits on the 6C law enforcement position, and I'm going to show you of some of the positions that in fact I know there's 6C cover, and some of them that are not. And this is based on my experience. I did some research. This bill is trying to correct that, so actually everybody gets the same coverage of retirement. And you'll be surprised how many of these agencies do not have that. And I'm going to give you an example here. 6C retirement positions for benefits. Border patrols are under 6C, Border Patrol agents. Department Enforcement Administration for Special Agents, DEA, also under 6C positions. The FBI agents, special agents, are also under 6C positions. The federal air marshals are also on the 6C position. Immigration enforcement agents are also under 6C positions. IRS special agents, U.S. Marshals, U.S. Park Rangers, and Secret Service. Those, in fact, I know they're 6C positions. What do I say this? I'm going to give you some examples here and scenarios. If you work as a Department of Defense employee, and those militaries out there, I know I have my brother-in-law, Colon brother, Abdias brother, God bless you, my friend, and I have Caban here. So you have somebody from the Department of Defense, this is a military technician, or a DOD civilian employee, and they do 10 years. Let's say he starts at 20 years old. Let's put 22 years old. He does 5 years. He wants to join the Federal Civilian Service, but he wants to become a law enforcement. And he wants to join the FBI, just to give you an example. He did 10 years, okay, in the Department of Defense in a civilian capacity. Those 10 years will not cover him for a 6C position retirement. It will count his benefits for health, sick leave, annual leave, but his time that he did is only covered for time, but it's not for retirement. He will still have to do 20 years on the job to retire. So pretty much he will have to do 30 years completely to completely retire. And that's the big difference with this. So for those out there that are applying for federal civilian jobs in the law enforcement capacity, you need to read on the job description, and you need to understand if it's in fact a 6C position. Another example, if you are a Border Patrol agent or a Secret Service agent and you decide to go to another agency, I'm going to give another example to make it more clear. 1811 position special agents, okay? They go to the same training. They go to CITP, FLETC. They get certified by the agency for the qualification. If they want to go to another 6C position, 1811 is this example, Secret Service, and they want to go into the FBI or to HSI, they can do that. They just have to meet certain requirements, and they have to wait for a opening on USA Jobs, like I said before, and they have to see the requirement for that specific opening. And that's how all your time served, your training, everything will carry over, and then all your time that you serve in that other agency, 6C position cover, will transfer over. And this is why it's so important. Another reason I said this, excuse me. And this example, this couple that I was advising and talking to them to give me some good counseling and consultation. The one person was or is in the process for one job right now, and that job is a 6C position. Okay, I don't remember the agency right now. It was Department of Homeland Security. So the person was undecisive because she wanted to become a FBI agent. So she said, if I join this job now, will I be able to actually to go and do what I really want to do, which is becoming an FBI agent? So I told the person, I said, listen, you're not losing anything because it's a 6C position. Everything that you do in that job, you get the training, you go to the basic training, you pass it, you get some time in your belt of experience law enforcement, and everything will transfer over. In other words, I told her, you're not losing anything. You're not gonna miss anything. Because once you're in that 6C position, you're covered, and then you can pursue that other job. Excuse me. Now, you need to understand that for law enforcement job, 6C positions, the minimum requirement or the maximum age that you can apply for the job is 37. So after 37, you cannot apply for a 6C law enforcement position unless you are already on a 6C position. Like I explained, they do have a waiver that you can jump from that agency to the other. I don't know what age is, but they give you a waiver. I don't know, it's 40, 44, but that's the magnitude of the importance of you understanding what a 6C position is. So I don't know if that pretty much make it clear for those out there. Some of the positions that I know that are not and they're fighting it, like I explained to you, was Customs and Border Protection officers. And I don't know if they got it already, but they were fighting it, and hopefully they got it. Nuclear material couriers, I did that job. That's the Department of Energy job that I did. At the time wasn't covered. I don't know at this point, because if you see they're added to the LEO definition, equivalent benefits via direct legislation. Legislation means that Congress will have to vote on this to actually to deem it that they meet the criteria to be a 6C position, and they can actually be covered under those benefits. They have the Capitol Police there, Supreme Court, I guess that's a police of those that provide security in the Supreme Court. Air traffic controllers, even though I know that's not a law enforcement job, but I'm pretty sure they're covered in certain criteria there. But that's pretty much a overview of that in there. I want to make sure you understand that. Let me go to my notes here. Have any questions, guys? I know I don't have a lot of people today, but again, I'm doing this. Those that have a question, you can go back to the video and share this information. I'll transition here in Spanish when I'm done here in a couple of minutes. Benefits when retiring. Okay, 6C law enforcement position. With 20 years, you get, and a lot of people don't know this, 34%. That is not a lot. And that's based on your base pay of your high tree, the same as the military. That is not a lot, 34% of your salary. And a lot of people think that the federal government get paid well. Yes, they do, some jobs, but when you retire, the retirement is not that much. That 34%, if you go a year over and continue all the way to 57, it goes up a percentage. That's what a lot of people stay in the government for a long time. They want to maximize their retirement. In my case, I give my example so you understand that 34, I'm buying 15 years, you can do the math, and that will be my pay because I'm buying my military active duty time. So I'll get close, 49% of my salary. But that's buying 15 years of active duty. I explained that in other videos. But that's the retirement, which is not that much. The mandatory retirement age, that's also known as MRA, is 57 years old. Unless you get a waiver and you can stay until 60, and that is not always approved. Usually those that get that waiver approved is SES, Senior Executive Services, and those are all up in the high chain of command. You can buy your military time. We talk about that. I give you my example that I'm buying 15 years active duty. You can also transfer your benefits, including the time served, from another 6C position. We talked about that. So you can transfer your benefits from one position to the other 6C position. Most 6C positions age join at 37. The maximum age, talked about that. But with the 6C position transition to another 6C position, you can actually have a waiver. I talked about some of the agencies before: FBI, DEA, ATF, ICE, and Secret Service. It's a pretty short video. I'm going to transition in Spanish here in a second, but it's important for those out there that are thinking about joining the federal civilian side in a law enforcement capacity. And I'm talking to those young soldiers out there that are thinking about doing 5-10 years. They don't know what they want to do. And they say, well, let me join the federal civilian service in the law enforcement capacity, and they don't know how this works. They can shoot me an email, private message to my website, estinconsultation.com. Please follow me in Facebook. I was going to say that and I forgot. Please, for those out there, subscribe in my YouTube channel too. I started the YouTube channel. These videos are in there. If you have any specific question, you can send me a message. What I'm doing in every live, I answer the questions in the next slide, but if I see something that I can answer right in the spot, I'll answer it. But I'm trying to grow this, and eventually it's going to turn into a podcast. I'm going to start inviting people into the show, guests, and they're going to be, there are subject matter experts on different subjects. I have a lot of friends that work in VA, in different agencies, so they can share their experience with you guys. That's pretty much it. Again, thank you so much. I really salute you. I'm going to transition to Spanish here. Those that want to stay, more than welcome. Please share the video out there, and I hope this information was of good to you, okay? So thank you so much. Muy buenas noches. Este es el sargento mayor de comando retirado ex centeno de Estin Consulting at estinconsultation.com. Me pueden enviar ahí un mensaje privado si tienen una pregunta en específico. Por favor, denle like y share estos videos que estamos promocionando. También tengo un video de YouTube. Por favor, suscríbanse al canal. Estamos ayudando a veteranos, no solo veteranos civiles que están tratando de entrar al gobierno federal. Estoy ayudando con resúmenes, con reclamaciones de discapacidad de veteranos, proyección de retiro de paga de la milicia, y también como preparación para transiciones de la milicia a trabajos federales civiles. Eso es lo que estoy haciendo. También hago notaría pública, trabajo en el área de Central Florida. También estoy mobiliario de notaría pública, so te puedo encontrar para notarizar los documentos. Di una breve información de lo que hablamos la semana pasada, que estábamos hablando de los beneficios de estar en la Guardia Nacional y en la Reserva, y también estar en el Servicio Federal Civil, a ver las 120 horas, para dar un recap aquí lo que hablamos la semana pasada, de cómo puedes empezar a recibir 8 horas por cada periodo de paga. Si tienes 15 años de servicio activo, lo puedes transferir a tu trabajo civil. También hablé que muchas agencias te dejan usar las 120 horas para entrenamiento militar. También puedes usar tus horas que acumulas de vacaciones anuales, y también algunas agencias te dejan usar días de enfermedad. Esta noche vamos a hablar brevemente de lo que son los beneficios de retiro de trabajo, del cumplimiento o de trabajos de cumplimiento de la ley, obviamente de trabajos de policía, y es bien específico que esta codificación se llama la 6C, y muchas personas no saben qué tipo de retiro o beneficios tienen estas posiciones. Estoy hablando completamente en experiencia, no estoy representando a ninguna agencia gubernamental, esto basadamente solo en experiencia. Hablé de unas definiciones que teníamos que cubrir antes de entrar al tema, y esas definiciones fueron de qué es los diferentes sistemas de retiro y las diferencias de los sistemas de retiro. Uno de ellos es el CSRS o CSRS, y también el Federal Employee Retirement System, que es el que vamos a hablar más en esta noche. Las diferencias en estos dos sistemas, para hacerlo breve, es que uno tiene beneficios, tiene que ver con el seguro social. También que no te machean lo que se llama el Thrift Saving Plan, que eso es la 401k, pero bajo el FERS o el FERS, pues sí tiene un buenos beneficios de seguro social y también te machean hasta 5% de la 410k. La diferencia en el CSR Retirement System es que la paga a lo último es un poquito más alta y tiene que ver con los beneficios, pero eso es para entrar en esas definiciones y cubrirla. Cuando hablamos de estos dos tipos de sistemas de retiro, estamos hablando de policía de cumplimiento de la ley. Hay un bill ahora mismo que está en el Congreso que se llama el Enforcement Officer Equity Act. Y básicamente lo que dice es esto, que hay muchas posiciones de policía cuando se está trabajando con el gobierno federal civil que no están cubiertas y no tienen los mismos beneficios que tienen otras posiciones que sí están cubiertas. Y eso es lo que ese bill que está para voto este año quiere restaurar y darle esos mismos beneficios a esos otros oficiales que están trabajando esas otras agencias. Y esto sería la diferencia de lo que haría si esta legislación se llevaría a cabo y tuviera los votos en el Congreso. Esto daría a los oficiales que ya están trabajando en posiciones de 6 o que van a hacer con esta legislación aprobada, es que con 20 años de servicio se pueden retirar a los 50 o con 25 años de servicios antes de los 50. Y algunas de las posiciones que están reconsiderando son las GS0083. Hablé de esto, que cuando usted aplica en USA Jobs, usted tiene que ver la descripción y la serie de los grados de las posiciones que están aplicando. Hablé de los 1811, los de 1811, que son los investigadores especiales, los 1801, los 1801, hablé todo eso en otros lives pasados. Esto está establecido para recapitular muchas posiciones de laboral de policía, y una de ellas es los que trabajan en el correo, como los que le llaman los Provost Marshals o el Special Agent Provost Marshal, si no me equivoco, o Postal Service. También otro es los que trabajan de policía en los hospitales de veteranos, que no están cualificados en esta posición de SEC. Y voy a ir básicamente para ver cuáles son estas posiciones. Hablé también de la definición de lo que es trabajo del cumplimiento de la ley para razones de retiro, y eso es que está definido por el título 5 como empleados que los trabajos son primariamente con investigaciones, el detenimiento de individuos que violaron la ley de Estados Unidos, para darlo brevemente. Estas son las posiciones que, vamos a hablar de las posiciones rápidamente, algunas que sí sé que son y están cubiertas bajo este plan de retiro y algunas que no. Las personas que trabajan en la patrulla fronteriza, Border Patrol Agents, están cubiertos bajo este retiro, y voy a decir los beneficios que tienen. Los agentes especiales también en posiciones 18-11 también están bajo este retiro. Los agentes especiales del FBI, los Air Marshals, esos son los que trabajan agentes federales en los aviones proveyendo seguridad. También inmigración, también está los agentes especiales que trabajan con el IRS, los que bregan con Revenue Internal, estaba tratando de la traducción, perdone. Los US Marshals, los Park Rangers y también el Servicio Secreto. ¿Okay? Estos están cubiertos sobre una 6C posición. ¿Por qué esto es un beneficio? Estaba hablando con una pareja y la dama estaba pensando que ella quiere ser agente especial del FBI. Entonces, pero ya ella está en el proceso de entrar a una agencia que ya está en una posición 6C. Yo le dije, pero ¿por qué vas a esperar por una vacante que el FBI tenga cuando ya tienes la cualificación y ya tiene un bachillerato? Si puedes entrar a esa posición, que ella no sabía que era 6C porque ella no sabía lo que era eso. Y yo le dije, estos son los beneficios. Le dije, tú entras al trabajo, haces el entrenamiento, tu tiempo de retiro empieza a contar, tienes los beneficios de seguro médico, de días de acumulación de enfermedad y de irregulares, todos los beneficios van a estar ahí. Cuando te muevas de esa posición a la otra posición 6C, todos esos beneficios se transfieren. Pero tiene que ser una posición 6C. Y estos son los que yo le dije. Ejemplo, le doy mi ejemplo. Yo trabajé por el Departamento de Energía y eso era también una posición de agente federal, pero esa posición en ese tiempo no era 6C, no estaba en esos estatutos de la posición 6C. Si yo hubiera estado ahí 5 años en esa posición y me hubiera transferido a otra agencia, todo se transfería excepto los años que le serví para retiro. No me hubiera cubierto, entonces hubiera tenido que empezar otra vez desde cero para que los años empezaran a contar para el retiro. Eso es lo importante que son estas posiciones 6C. Algunas de las posiciones que no le dije en ese tiempo era los Nuclear Material Carriers. Yo hice ese trabajo por un corto tiempo. También la patrulla fronteriza que está en los puertos, no el Border Patrol, muy diferente. Y quiero hacer una ampliación aquí para que entendamos la diferencia. Mucha gente confunde lo que son Customs and Border Protection Officers o oficiales de aduana versus los Border Patrols o los agentes de la patrulla fronteriza. Son dos papeles completamente diferentes, la función de ellos son completamente diferentes. Aquí usted ve que los Border Patrol Agents o los agentes de la patrulla fronteriza están cubiertos bajo la 6C y los oficiales de aduana no estaban. Yo no sé si ya se lo dieron, estoy tratando de buscar más información, si alguno sabe, yo sé que tengo amistades que están trabajando todavía con aduana, a ver si se lo dieron, pero en este bill, en esta legislación que hablé, que está para votación, sé que estaba eso impuesto en esa legislación. Eso es lo importante de saber estas cosas. Te doy otro ejemplo. La edad máxima en que tú puedes entrar a una posición 6C es 37 años. Ejemplo, si tú trabajaste con el Departamento de Defensa como civil, hiciste 10 años y entraste a los 20 años, ya a esta edad tienes 30 años en el ejemplo que te estoy dando. Y la persona dice, yo quiero ser agente federal con el FBI en una posición 6C. Pues todos tus beneficios van a transferirse excepto el tiempo que le hiciste en el servicio. Vas a tener que empezar nuevamente para poder entonces eso contarte para la posición de 6C y para los beneficios que trae una posición 6C. Y esa es la diferencia bien grande. Por eso mucha gente opta porque ya que hicieron 10 años, aunque todos los otros beneficios se transfieren, pero tienes que empezar el reloj otra vez para retirarte. Eso tienes que hacerle otros 20 años. Y eso es bien importante porque mucha gente no sabe eso. Voy a hablar de algunos de los beneficios que tiene en estas posiciones. Mucha gente no sabe que en estas posiciones el retiro es 34%. Y 34% no es mucho dinero. Por eso es que mucha gente se queda más tiempo de los 20 años, porque cada año que hace adicional te sube un porcentaje. En mi caso, en mi ejemplo, yo siempre lo doy porque hablé de comprar tu tiempo militar activo. Yo estoy comprando 15 años y cuando yo haga 20 años, en vez de irme con 34%, hago la matemática, me doy 49%, casi con 50% de mi paga. Yo no tengo que quedarme hasta los 57 porque esa es la edad mandatoria de retiro. Yo con 20 años me voy, porque ¿para qué quedarme? Me puedo ir joven y maximizar mi retiro. Hablé de la edad máxima de retiro es a los 57, a menos que te den un waiver o te hagan una excepción y puedes quedarte a los 60, pero usualmente eso se lo dan a ejecutivos de altos rangos en las agencias. Puedes comprar tu tiempo militar, hablé de eso. También hablé que podías transferir tus beneficios de una posición 6C a otra posición 6C, incluyendo el tiempo servido. Si hiciste 5 años en una posición 6C, cuando entres a otra posición 6C, todo se transfiere, incluyendo el tiempo que estuviste en esa agencia. La mayoría de las posiciones 6C, la edad máxima que te puedes entrar es a los 37, pero cuando estás en una posición 6C ya y te vas a transferir a otra posición 6C, hay unos estatutos que te dejan, unas excepciones que te dejan entrar más tarde, 40, 44, no sé ahora mismo que podrías ir a la otra posición de 6C y cualificarte, porque también tienes que entender esto, que tienes que cualificarte en la academia, o tienes que pasar la academia. Hablé de algunas de las agencias, como dice el FBI, la DEA, la ATF, ICE, Servicio Secreto. Y eso básicamente, dando una recapitulación, estos son algunos de los beneficios por encima. Esta información usted la puede encontrar. Cuando tú te retiras, para cerrar con esto, tienes beneficios del porcentaje que te expliqué que vas a tomar. También tienes beneficios de aceptar el plan médico. También tienes seguro de vida, y eso sería cuando estés retirándote, esas opciones que tú vas a tomar. Pero lo que quería hablar eran específicos de las posiciones 6C. Sé que mucha gente tiene esas preguntas. Por favor, compartan estos videos. Si tienen algunas personas que son jóvenes que están pensando ingresar a la milicia o algún trabajo federal civil, por favor, denle mi información. Le pueden referir conmigo a mi Facebook. Mi información está en mi página, estinconsultation.com. Ahí está toda mi información. Me pueden enviar un mensaje privado o me pueden mandar un mensaje, enviar un mensaje también por Facebook. Y estoy aquí para ayudarles. Vuelvo y repito, la página estinconsultation.com. Ahí me pueden enviar un mensaje privado. Si no, me pueden encontrar en Facebook. Por favor, compartan estos videos. Por favor, en YouTube también denle a la campanita para que se puedan suscribir a estos mensajes. Voy a seguir trayendo mensajes o contenido todas las semanas. Si tienen algún tema específico, si tienen alguna pregunta en específico, por favor, pregúntenme. Estamos aquí para ayudar. De verdad que le doy muchas gracias por permitirme entrar en su hogar. De verdad que me da mucho ánimo de seguir ayudando a la gente. Hemos estado ayudando, estaba hablando con esta pareja y de verdad que me interesó cómo ellos están interesados en una pareja bien joven. Eran bien jóvenes, en los 25, 26, y ya estaban planificando su futuro para ingresar a las Fuerzas Armadas o a la Fuerza Federal Civil, y de verdad que tenían su plan. Solamente le di orientación de las cosas que podía hacer mejor. Estoy aquí para ayudarles, a sus órdenes. Le doy muchas gracias, los saludos. Cójanlo suave, Cabán, mi mamá, saludos, Abdía, Dios los bendiga, mi hermano, y seguimos para adelante. Aquí nunca hay unos aplauditos así. Estamos tratando de hacer esto un poquito más cómico aquí y mantenernos ocupados. Nos vemos, que pasen muy buenas noches, ¿ok? Bye, 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 bye. Bye, 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 bye. Bye, bye. Nos vemos, cuídense.